Hey everybody, how's it going? Mario here. Guys, I want to do another video on PTSD Combat Veteran. The title of this one is how do you deal with children? How do you deal with children when you have somebody who has PTSD? Um, this is a topic that's very hard and very near and dear to me. One because my kids had to live through it, and I know that it was really hard for them to have to deal with a lot of the changes that came along. First of all, I think a lot of people are not understanding as to the hardships of most military families and their dependents. Most of them, sometimes go months without seeing their parent, their deployed parent. In some cases, they don't even get a chance to hear from them on a regular basis. Little things that I think most other children out there take for granted. Uh, Military children cherish. Um, and I want to talk to you guys about how does a combat veteran deal with children. It's very very hard, guys, because I think the biggest problem that a lot of combat veterans have is that in reality they start treating their kids like they treat their soldiers, and that's not really the right thing to do. I am guilty of it, and I am so thankful for my kids that stood up to me and said, "Hey, I don't like the way you treat us, Dad." And let me just tell you guys, I think I've said this story a couple of times before, but if you haven't heard it before, I'm just gonna give you guys a quick overview of it. Basically, I was watching TV, and then my kids knocked on the door, and they stood at the foot of my bed, and they were crying, and I couldn't understand why. And I asked them what's wrong, and then you know um, my oldest, who was now in college and starting her graduate school, she's like, "Dad, we don't like the way you treat us." And and then seeing my kids just cry their little eyes out, man, it really hit me home. And it hit me to the point that I was like, oh my god, I become a monster to my kids, and that's something that you really do not want to happen. I really don't want any of you to have to go through what I did or my kids had to go through. But I still think that we need to educate the dependents and also the wives and the kids to ensure that they kind of understand the reason why mommy and daddy are kind of different when they came back from deployment. In reality, there's a lot of things that happen with a lot of us. A lot of us are super hyper vigilant. A lot of us have a tendency of anything and everything bother us, to include loud noises, loud people, loud parties, areas where there's a lot of people around. So just kind of keep an eye on that kind of stuff, because you really don't want that around. Usually, that combat vet, when they get home, to them, their home is their castle, man. So the last thing they want to hear is you guys complaining about something that happened to you on your day. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but what I'm saying is that you should ease into it, because I think a lot of vets have a tendency of not comprehending right away. And if it just seems like it's just going to be a complaint session, they usually just zone you off, or they'll tell you to be quiet, you know. And I know that that's sometimes very hard for the dependents and a lot of the children, because in reality, a lot of them want to tell you how they feel, especially if you have female, daughters, or, they have a tendency of expressing themselves more with their dad than they do with their mom. But it doesn't matter. There's some daughters that are actually very close to their moms, and so if that's you, then that's probably actually a great thing, and it's a blessing. But what I think a lot of people, especially those that haven't been in a combat theater, is that we are so used to so much chaos. We really are. We're used to chaotic, being on the edge, and then all of a sudden you get home and everything's so quiet. And what it is that it, like I was telling you guys, it's your hypervigilance. It comes to the point where um, even a little cricket will sound loud as hell to that combat vet. So those are the kind of things that you guys need to understand, that we are so used to. Let me just give you guys a quick scenario, man. You could be sleeping and all of a sudden you get shot with mortar fire or rocket fire. You wake up all startled and trying to put your vest and go into the bunker so you don't die. I did that so many times. I can tell you that for a fact. Getting shot at, it's really a horrific thing that I don't recommend anybody having to go through a firefight. I must tell you, it becomes very chaotic, and it's something that it stays embedded in your head. Certain things get, certainly embedded in your head, and because they're in such high hypervigilance, they have a tendency of overreacting. Um, I think I talked about this in other videos where I talked about, if I'm driving or if the combat veteran's driving, try not to tell them or her what the hell how to drive, because in reality they have a tendency of getting really irritated. You know, like I can tell you, for instance, I went off on my kids for something small because they were fighting in the car, and it just got me so riled up, so crazy, man. I just went off on them, man. To the point that even my wife was crying. And it's like, God, I wish I could take those times back, but in reality, it is what it is, man. It's what we have become. And my biggest thing with all these videos is I want to give the service member dependents, or their wives or husbands, an idea of what they're going through in their head. Is it always going to be that way? No, it's not. It's going to get better. Over time, it's going to get better. Getting therapy, it's always a good thing. Military one source, going to the VA, going to the vet center, going to the veterans hotline. Just getting help definitely makes you a better person. But I just don't want you to have to experience the stuff that I did, and I'm sharing a lot of this stuff because in reality, I just don't want many of our service members and our families, especially the children, to have to deal with the kind of stuff that my kids had to deal with. And I'm sure there's a lot of there's a lot of uh, there's a lot of people that have probably the same similar things that happen to them or whatever. But one thing I can tell you is that your loved one will become better. Little by little, you just have to integrate into their life, and they will become better, and they'll become your best friend like they always were before they deployed. Um, I think the biggest thing is you have to have a little bit more patience than you used to. And I know that's a hard thing for a service member, family member. They're like, wait a minute. I waited for him for a year or 6 months or whatever the case may be. And he comes home with an attitude. Well, in reality, you need to stop and think about it. It takes a long time for the body to decompress. It really does, and I think no amount of therapy, no amount of hanging out with their buddies, all kinds of stuff, it's going to take time, and you just have to be patient. And another thing that I want to recommend is if you guys can do family therapy sessions with your loved one, or if you guys can have a session with the therapist of your loved one, and so he or she can kind of give you guys what's bothering him, what are some of the issues that he or she is going through, so that you guys can better help each other out and better communicate. The biggest thing, guys, is communication. You have to learn to communicate. You have to learn to be, especially for the service members' family, you have to be very careful how you word certain things. Because in reality, uh, like I was saying, the hypervigilance and even a word might trigger something. And of course, it did that to me. So my biggest thing is just give it time, give it patience, get lots of therapy, learn to talk to each other, learn to have some sort of relationship again. Go out on field trips together, man. Spend time together. Make it quality time, you know? Go out to the beach. You have no idea how much of a good therapy session it is for a service member to be around water, to be around a beach, preferably a beach. You know that soothing sound of the water coming through with the waves. I don't know what it is, but it really helps me, and I know it would definitely help a lot of people out there. But just be around water. I don't know what it is about water. I wish I could explain it to you, but it just seems to me that when we're around water, whether it's a river, a lake, or the beach, or ocean, we have a tendency to be more calm for some reason. I don't know what it is. It has a great effect on the way we feel. And but my biggest thing is that over time it's gonna get better. I mean, my kids now, I mean, I love them to death, and they love me to death. And now I'm able to better communicate with them. I'm able to listen, which is the very hardest thing. The hardest thing for me to have to do is just to listen and to understand what they're going through. And it took me these type of events that I was telling you guys for me to kind of grasp what it really means. And I mean, if you guys really love your family, man, you're gonna have to learn to be patient. And I'm talking to the service member. You have to learn to be patient, man. Patience is a virtue. You can get through this. We all can get through this. And little by little, we're starting to knock out those numbers now. Now we're down to 20 service members are committing suicide compared to 22. I mean, it adds up. I know that that's still a high number, but I think that if we just put a little bit more of emphasis in our everyday lives and try to make every little bit of family time, quality time, you guys will get through this. All right? I know you will. All right, guys. I hope you get something out of this video. Like always, God bless you. God bless the United States of America. And I'm out.